Brother made my life hell, then got my wife pregnant. Now he wants my help after our parents disowned him and left me their $2 million inheritance. My younger brother, David, has always harbored a deep-seated resentment towards me. If you think it stemmed from jealousy, you'd be wrong. He was the favored child, not me. There was no reason for him to be envious. To give you some context, our mother always indulged David. He was the golden child of our family. She cooked his meals, did his laundry, and even asked me to help him with his schoolwork. I was expected to assist him simply because we were family, but I never received the same consideration. I accepted this, as I was quite independent. Perhaps it was partly my fault for always meeting his needs without expecting anything in return. He never helped me when I needed it, and only approached me when he wanted something. While I was a quiet, introverted kid who enjoyed studying and keeping to myself, he was loud and rough, just like our dad. I also tend to be straightforward and honest, never sugarcoating things. I believe my mother may have developed a negative perception of me because of my straightforwardness. This favoritism made David the family's darling, and I didn't mind it while we were growing up. However, problems began when he started bullying and mocking me for being different from him. He would tease me about my height and the fact that I wore glasses. He would sneak into my room, read my diary, and then complain to my mom about what I had written. When I yelled at him and complained to our parents about him invading my privacy, they would laugh it off, saying it wasn't a big deal. He did more awful things, like nearly breaking my glasses and putting nasty things in my food. He even once put little stones in my cereal, but luckily, I found them before they could damage my teeth. When I told my mom, she dismissed it, saying this is how brothers bond. Whenever we fought, David would zero in on my insecurities to insult me. We went to the same school, so he knew I was being bullied by a few kids. Instead of supporting me, he sided with the bullies, calling me names like ugly loser or hairy monkey, and encouraging them to physically harm me, saying I was just a big failure. Another time, during a fight over something trivial that I can't even remember, he told me to kill myself. While I could easily brush off most insults, that one really hurt because I was struggling with my mental health at the time. I'm doing better now, but it was devastating to hear that my own brother wanted me dead. Since Dad was often at work and Mom didn't seem to care much, she even scolded me once, claiming it was my fault for irritating him. Things progressively worsened. During high school, there was a shocking incident when David attempted to set my hair on fire, and unbelievably, our mother defended him, claiming he was merely playing. Seriously, who behaves like that? Thankfully, my dad eventually sided with me and pointed out the gravity of the situation. He even threatened to call the police on David. This moment was a real eye-opener for my brother, as he had never faced any consequences for his actions before. He was genuinely stunned, and my dad made it clear that enough was enough and that David needed to start respecting his older brother. Later, Dad came into my room to talk. I never expected his support because he always told David how similar they were, which was true. Dad admitted that he had waited for years, hoping David would mature, but he was slowly realizing that David was becoming a big bully. Hearing this from my dad was incredibly validating, and I almost broke down in tears. I confessed everything David had done to me over the years and even mentioned the bullying at school. My dad was shocked at how much I had endured. The next day, he spoke to the principal to ensure the bullies were warned about severe consequences if they continued. Later that evening, Dad enrolled me in MMA at our local gym, telling me I needed to man up and stand up to bullies in my life. I admit that a nerdy kid like me trying to learn to fight might have seemed laughable, but I was very focused. I managed my time well to balance my studies and daily workouts, and the MMA classes completely changed my life and physique. One day, David was up to his antics again. He stole my pocket money, which we received for helping with chores. I had been saving it for a while. David sneaked into my room and took it. I caught him just as he was about to cycle off with his friends. I demanded he return my money, but David mocked me, saying all I could do was run to Daddy for help. I don't know what came over me, but I punched him in the face. He was stunned, fell backward, and I retrieved my money from his pocket before throwing him back down. David started crying loudly, which was quite comical. However, my mother rushed out to help him and find out what happened. When she learned I had fought him, she was surprised and reprimanded me, saying I should be a better role model for David, who seemed to enjoy seeing me scolded. My mother also complained to my dad about my behavior, saying I needed to be controlled. My dad grimly asked both of us to explain ourselves. I told him how David had stolen the money I had worked hard for and saved, while David tried to justify it by saying he needed the money for a date, and that as his brother, I should help him. However, Dad told David he was lucky I only punched him for stealing because anyone else would have called the police. He continued to tell David that he had no right to take others' things without their consent. David didn't like that and threw a tantrum, likely hoping our mother would side with him, but Dad remained firm. When David realized he wasn't going to be punished for being hit, he screamed how much he hated me and ran back to his room, locking himself in. Following that incident, David began to distance himself from me. He had finally understood that he couldn't bully me anymore, and that even Dad had stopped supporting his antics. For the first time in a long while, I felt like we were equals. Though he could no longer physically harm me, he resorted to verbal insults when our parents weren't around. His behavior worsened with age, becoming angrier and more short-tempered each year. When I approached him with a question, he would ignore me and walk away, muttering insults like nerd or loser under his breath. If he needed to communicate something, he would relay it through our mother instead of speaking to me directly. When I questioned her about why David couldn't just talk to me, she would urge me to be more understanding. I couldn't tell if it was just puberty or genuine hatred. Over time, dealing with his comments became unbearable, and I longed to move out and get away from him. I repeatedly asked my mother to mediate a sit-down conversation for us to resolve our issues, but she always refused, saying she didn't want to get involved. When I asked her opinion on why David treated me this way, she would brush off the question. Eventually, I left for my dream university, having earned a scholarship as a top student. My dad threw a party for me, and even my mom seemed proud. However, David remained aloof and distant, barely acknowledging my achievements. The day I left for university was a mix of excitement for the future and relief to escape the toxic home environment. The first few months at university were liberating. I made new friends, enjoyed my classes, and started to build a life separate from the oppressive atmosphere of my childhood. The constant fear of David's verbal attacks lifted, giving me a newfound sense of peace. During my second year, I met my wife Karen at a frat party through a friend, and we immediately clicked. Coming from a religious background, having kids outside of marriage was frowned upon. However, when we discovered she was pregnant in our final year, we decided to marry right after graduation. Our wedding was a small but joyful ceremony. Our parents were happy for us, and we enjoyed the celebration. At that moment, I believed Karen was the love of my life. I had always envisioned a monogamous relationship, one woman to come home to and share my life with. Despite other women showing interest over the years, I never pursued anything because I was genuinely content in my marriage. Karen was my dream girl, and I never wanted to hurt her. However, I later uncovered 2 incidents of infidelity in our marriage. One was an intermittent affair with her married co-worker that spanned several years, and the other was a brief fling with an ex-boyfriend during a visit to her family. Some might think I was naive, and looking back, I can't completely disagree. Each time we separated for a while, I chose to forgive my wife. I didn't want to raise our child in a broken home and believed we could overcome these obstacles. The affair with her co-worker happened when we were young, and I attributed it to youthful mistakes and poor judgment. For a period, things seemed to get better. Although I could never fully trust her again, I did my best to set aside my doubts, knowing that if I chose to forgive, I had to genuinely work toward a fresh start. It's been 4 years since her second betrayal, and I felt confident in my decision to give her another chance. Karen seemed to have changed, and we were genuinely happy, planning our family's future. However, 3 months ago, my world was shattered once more when she revealed that she had been having a long-term affair and suggested that our son might not be mine. Her words struck me like a ton of bricks. A mix of shock, betrayal, and disbelief overwhelmed me. I struggled to comprehend the enormity of her confession. In a daze, I managed to ask why she had kept such a significant secret and how she could have done something so devastating. Her reaction was cold and indifferent, as if she were detached from the pain she caused. Her vague responses left me with more questions than answers. It was a surreal and painful moment, confronting the shattered trust and uncertainty about my own family. I continued to press Karen for the truth because I felt I deserved to know the father of the child I had been raising since birth. Ultimately, she admitted it was David. My eyes widened in shock as I asked Karen what she meant. She explained that she and David had become friends when I introduced her to my family, and she stayed with us from Thanksgiving until New Year's. David, usually cold to me, was warm and polite towards her, which made me glad because I didn't want Karen to feel unwelcome. Karen wanted to be accepted into my family, so she spent significant time with my mom whenever possible. She noticed the rift between David and me and questioned me about it. I opened up about our strained relationship and explained that we might never repair it due to his unresolved feelings. Karen understood but started including David in our outings, hoping it would help us bond. Whenever we planned to watch a movie, she invited David, and we watched whatever he chose. During this time, David and I exchanged a few words, which was an improvement compared to his usual silent treatment. I remember Karen and David hanging out and playing video games together, but I never thought much of it. Karen told me that one day, David opened up to her about his struggles and a recent breakup. Feeling vulnerable, he struck up a friendship with her. She mentioned that he would harmlessly flirt with her when I wasn't around, and eventually, things escalated beyond her control. The vision of my wife and brother sleeping together made me feel sick. Karen confessed that she felt guilty afterward and left him, which matched her abrupt decision to go home instead of spending New Year's with me. Although I tried to convince her to stay, she was adamant about leaving. When we met back at college after the holidays, she was her usual cheerful self, so I didn't question anything. 2 weeks later, we found out she was pregnant. Karen admitted she didn't know if the child was mine or David's, and with no way to prove it, she chose to stay with me, knowing I was the more dependable brother. This was why we got married. My world felt like it was crashing down. The son I loved might not even be mine. I asked Karen if she had been sleeping with David recently, and she slowly nodded. She revealed that they had always stayed in touch because their chemistry was undeniable. They would sneak off to hotels, lying to me about working overtime. She admitted that half of her business trips were actually romantic getaways with him. I asked why she married me if she wanted my brother, and Karen said she didn't want to be the one to break off the marriage. She saw me as a wonderful father to our son and decided to stay. In her words, she made a mistake and didn't know when to stop. I told Karen I was glad she told me the truth but that I was going to pack up and leave. She started crying, asking for forgiveness, and expected me to yell at her. Instead, I calmly packed my clothes. Karen insisted that if I loved her, I should fight for her and that mistakes happen in every marriage. When she realized I wasn't going to do anything, she changed tactics, saying our son would be affected by a divorce and that children shouldn't be raised in broken homes. I reminded her that I might not even be the father, which made her cry more and accuse me of being cruel. It seemed like she believed nothing could make me want to leave the marriage. Perhaps it was partly my fault for letting things slide in the past. While I did love her, it felt more like it stemmed from thinking we had a son together and had been together since college. Karen kept insisting it wasn't too late to fix things, but I struggled to believe her and had no patience left. Trust was a major issue, and her words felt hollow. Even if I forgave her, I could never forget she slept with my brother. I've always believed in forgiving mistakes because we're all flawed, but this was beyond acceptable limits. I left her crying on the doorstep and checked into a hotel. The next day, I went straight to my parents and revealed everything about my wife's affair with David, explaining how they had been secretly sleeping together for years. The shock on their faces was undeniable. True to her nature, my mother initially tried to defend David, insisting that her boy could never do such a thing to his own brother. Determined to expose the truth, I asked my parents to remain silent and let me call David in front of them. I instructed them to stay quiet so I could catch David off guard, making him believe it was a private conversation. When David answered the phone, I confronted him about the affair. At first he vehemently denied it, refusing to accept any responsibility. However, when I told him that Karen had admitted to everything, he started blaming her, calling her characterless. He claimed it wasn't his fault if women were attracted to him and that he was the better-looking brother. I told him firmly that I would expose him to everyone. When David mocked me, saying no one would believe me because he was the golden child, I scoffed at his arrogance and thanked him for confirming the truth, knowing our parents had heard everything. David went quiet and then spluttered, trying to explain himself and salvage his image. My mother, still in shock, demanded an explanation from David. He stuttered through a feeble attempt to justify his actions, blaming everyone else but himself and desperately trying to shift the blame onto Karen. I could see my mother, who had once been protective of her favored son, now felt a mix of disappointment and anger. In that charged moment, I felt a strange sense of vindication. For years, I had endured David's torment. Now, the truth was out, and the roles were reversed. It was David who stood exposed, his actions laid bare for everyone to see. As David's words faltered, my father, usually reserved in his expressions, couldn't contain his disappointment. He asked me to pass him the phone and began to speak to David. "David," my father began, his voice laden with disappointment. "What you've done isn't just a betrayal of your brother, but a betrayal of this family. You slept with your brother's wife and continued the affair even after they were married. Your actions have severe consequences and have irreversibly shattered the trust we had in you. I raised both of you to value family, loyalty, and decency. What you've shown today defies everything I've tried to teach you." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink into David's conscience. "Your disregard for your brother's feelings and the lack of respect for his marriage are unacceptable. You've not only hurt him but also torn apart the bonds that hold our family together. Your mother and I are partly to blame for what you've become, but we will no longer tolerate this behavior. From today, you're cut off from the college funds I set up for you. You'll have to figure out how to pay your university fees on your own. I will also stop funding your lifestyle. Do you think it makes you more of a man to sleep with married women? Let's see how you manage without my money." Throughout this, I maintained a composed demeanor. Although I initially wanted to scream at David, watching my dad punish him was the ultimate vindication. I had exposed his true nature, and it was clear he had underestimated the consequences. My mother, despite David's persistent protests, continued to justify him, but my father swiftly ended the call, shutting down David's attempts to explain away his actions. Afterward, my mom approached me and hugged me. It had been a long time since we shared such a moment, but in that embrace, there was an unspoken understanding and support amid the family turmoil. She apologized for not believing me all this time. My 14-year-old self could never have imagined this moment, being vindicated and embraced by my mother. Following this, my dad helped me find a good lawyer to divorce Karen. She and her lawyer tried to fight dirty, asking for alimony since I earned more than her. But her affair played heavily in my favor. We also conducted a paternity test, and it was confirmed that David was indeed the father of the child. The news was incredibly painful, even worse than discovering Karen's infidelity. I was furious that the son I had loved and raised wasn't mine. However, I decided to stay strong. Karen begged me to continue visiting my son, arguing he shouldn't be punished for the situation, but I couldn't bear to see him. He reminded me too much of David, and I hated it. After my divorce was finalized, I felt a sense of freedom wash over me as I moved into my own bachelor path. It felt surreal to live alone since I had married so young and never really had the chance to experience independence. However, my naturally independent nature allowed me to quickly adapt to my new lifestyle, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. 2 weeks ago, my dad called to tell me he was considering changing his will because he didn't want to leave anything to David. My dad is incredibly stubborn, and once he decided to cut David out of his life, he stuck to it. David tried reaching out to our parents and even showed up at their doorstep, begging for forgiveness, but they refused to let him in. Even my mother, who usually gave in to David's tantrums, seemed done with him, though it must have been hardest for her. David never texted me to apologize for what he had done, showing he didn't regret his actions. He was just upset about being cut off from our parents. Dad told me he planned to leave everything to me, ensuring David wouldn't contest it later. He would leave David only $1. My eyes widened in shock as my dad had worked hard his entire life. Including his assets, retirement fund, and life insurance, the total came to nearly $2 million. The only condition in his will was that if my dad passed away before my mom, she would continue living in their house, even though ownership would transfer to me. I didn't mind this, as I wanted to care for my mom in her final days. Somehow, David found out about this, and, unable to reach our parents, called me yesterday, trying to make amends. He explained how he was struggling with college and that after Karen discovered the paternity of the child, she had been pestering him for child support. He said he had no money and was looking for part-time jobs but couldn't find anything. He begged me to talk to our family to start fresh since he really needed my help. I laughed in his face and told him I was done with him. I reminded him that he should have thought about the consequences before sleeping with my wife and getting her pregnant. David argued that I was being unfair and that Karen was also to blame, to which I agreed. I reminded him that I had divorced her, making her his responsibility now. He shouldn't be calling me to complain about her or the child since these were the consequences of his own actions. David started to raise his voice, but I interrupted, reminding him that he was no longer the favored child in the family but the black sheep who had slept with his own brother's wife. At that moment, David began to cry, telling me how everyone, including our grandparents and relatives, had turned against him. While this was true, it was no longer my concern. I told him we were done and that he should never call me again since I no longer considered him my brother. Since then, I've replayed the conversation in my mind. Despite my hatred for my brother, I had never heard him cry, at least not since we were kids. I won't lie. It did hurt me a bit to see him so helpless. So, I guess I'm here to ask if I should talk to our parents about him or if I would be an asshole if I don't. Update 1. Hi everyone, many of you have been asking why I am no longer in contact with my son Henry, and some have even called me cruel. I need to explain that I am not comfortable raising another man's child. This isn't a stepson situation. I was led to believe Henry was my son, only to later discover he is actually my brother David's son. Naturally, this revelation hurt deeply, and I cried over it for days. The main reason I don't want any contact with Henry is that I no longer want Karen in my life. If I remain connected to her child, she will find a way to re-enter my life, and I need my space. You may think I'm cruel or selfish, but I can't see him ever again, at least not for a very long time. Update 2. Most of you correctly guessed that it was my mother who informed David about my dad changing his will, leading David to call me as a last resort to fix things. I confronted her in front of my dad, and she broke down, saying I had punished David enough and that he had learned his lesson. My dad firmly told my mother that if she believed what David did was forgivable, then he could no longer stay married to her because he could never forgive such a betrayal. This threat silenced my mother. My dad made it clear that if she ever talked with David again and we found out, she could pack her bags and leave. As I mentioned, my dad is very stubborn. Hopefully my mother will learn from her mistakes. Update 3. Reddit. It's been 5 months since my last update. My relationship with my parents has improved over the past few months. My dad and I go golfing every weekend, and he treats me more like a buddy than a son. Although my mother misses David, she has stayed away from him. The last I heard about David was from my cousin, who said David had been asking everyone for money, and eventually had to drop out of college because he couldn't afford the fees. He and Karen are living together, and he has a part-time job as a mechanic. Apparently they are raising Henry together, which is a good thing, I guess. I never discuss David with my parents, and they don't bring him up either. For everyone asking, I am doing quite well. I was promoted at my job 2 months ago, so my salary has significantly improved. I haven't been dating anyone as I feel I still need time and space to heal. I've been going to therapy, so we'll see how that works out. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.
I punched an autistic kid after he groped me and now everyone hates me. Am I the jerk? That grope was the last straw. I have known Troy since nursery, kindergarten for Americans, or just anyone, and he has always been a baby. It was always his autism that made him who he was. I don't know why, but he always had a crush on me. I rejected him gently multiple times, but he never took no for an answer. As we grew older, he got worse. He started commenting on my chest, asking to touch them, asking to see them. His friends kept trying to convince me to show him because nobody would be nice enough to give him a chance. And in year 7, 6th grade, he started groping me. I told teachers, but they kept saying that his autism doesn't make him know any better. It was only me. He got jealous when I was in the presence of another guy. He would have meltdowns and I got into trouble because I knew how upset he would get. No, I didn't. It was like my only purpose was to be his. I wasn't allowed to be my own person. The groping continued. I kept telling him to stop. He didn't listen. I remember crying on the floor and teachers just kept saying that his autism makes him like this and that I'm being a good person by taking care of him. His groping hurt. I don't know how to explain it. He just grabbed my chest and butt hard. And it hurts. The groping continued for 4 years. I was always his caretaker, his girlfriend, his best friend, his. I couldn't stand it anymore. I couldn't take it anymore. It was hot and I wore a skirt and he proceeded to put his hands up my skirt and groped my butt. I lost it and punched him around the nose. His nose got broken and unfortunately now I am getting put into isolation for 2 months for bullying an autistic kid. He's not a kid though. He's 16 years old. He acts normal around his friends. He treats everyone else with respect. He's not a kid. Now everyone hates me. I have been receiving death threats and people have been saying he should have done worse. Now all I want to do is curl up and die. Maybe I should have been nicer. Maybe I should have been more sympathetic. Maybe I should have just accepted it. I could have been his only chance. For the record, I don't despise autistic people. He is not a representative of them. He is just an awful person. Troy is just a horrible person. Thank you for letting me vent. Edit. Hi all. I didn't expect so much attention, so thank you for the validation. Giving my context. His parents are prominent people in our community. His dad is a third-generation Army something, IDK, and his mom is known for always holding all of the stuff for kids. Like the summer fairs, etc. She is also part of the school board and friends with the higher-ups, if you will, which is why this happened at all. I wasn't technically his caretaker because I didn't have to feed him, clothe him, etc. I just had to be his friend. His dad is also friends with the police station. They go way back, so that's another reason why they didn't do much. Or just took a statement then wrote him off as mentally disabled. And the police here just suck ass here. Police officers have SA'd many women before here. They just get let off, unfortunately. Onto a semi-update. Firstly, my parents will look into lawyers. We just couldn't afford one. And I was always too scared to get one. I guess it was because I have been so neglected, that I just thought nobody would believe me. However, my other relatives said that they would chip in and pay for a good lawyer. Meanwhile, my parents took me out of the school and I will stay at my grandma's for a while to recover. My auntie is also going to pay for my therapy. So I will enjoy that much needed therapy. Thank you so much for the kind words. I hope you all miraculously wake up with more money in your bank's accounts than you expected. Edit 2. Hi all. I didn't expect this story to end up on TikTok so quickly. I would like to thank you all again for your words and thank you so much to those who have been reaching out to me. It means a lot. I would also like to point out that this is a throwaway account, and I want to stay anonymous. But thank you all so much again for the kind words and comments. I realize that I was never in the wrong. That I am a person. Thank you. I truly hope you all have the best days ever. You all are amazing relevant comments from OOP comment 1. Is the kid cognitively challenged? OP, nope, he has mild autism if that makes sense. He's actually quite good around people. Just not me IG. Comment 2. I would get law enforcement involved. OP, we tried to. They just didn't care because he is mentally challenged. My parents genuinely tried to do something, but when everyone defends him, they believe the majority. I mean, when I usually say this story, people automatically think I hate autistic people. I don't. Because autistic people don't do this. Horrible people do. Autism isn't the label for assault, the label is sexual assaulter. Update. Firstly, I would like to thank you all so much for your kind words and messages. Thank you for your support and validation, your words meant so much to me. Also, I thought I would explain the whole "I hope you all miraculously wake up with more money in your bank account" comment. I heard someone in TikTok say this and thought it would be a nice thing to say, as some people did question it in my messages. But yeah, thank you all again. Before this update starts, I would like to say that this all occurred like 2 weeks ago now. I just reached my breaking point and needed to vent. Hence why the update may be soon to some. This won't be the final update, but an update. I would also like to clear the air with my parents. Now unfortunately, my parents come from a country where this stuff is normal. Not only that, but I am partially to blame as I didn't say anything. Eventually I did tell them and they tried their best to help me. But they didn't know how. Though I do acknowledge their efforts, I am still going to be taking time to heal from them as well. My entire family also had a go at them and expressed their disappointment. The best thing for now is for me to spend some time apart from them. So to begin, I left the school. After my parents had heard that I got into trouble seriously because of Troy again, they basically thought it was time to pull me out. I am due to start my new school in 2 weeks. I have also been trying to settle at my grandma's house as I just needed a fresh start with fresh people. To be honest, I have never felt so free. I have had to deal with that torment for years and years. So now I can enjoy the pleasure of walking home and not seeing him or bumping into him. So I feel great. On to the serious stuff. As I had mentioned, my family basically decided to pay for a lawyer, and we are now hoping to have a lawsuit against basically everyone involved. My grandma also had a go, to put nicely, with the school's board for basically allowing nepotism to harass other girls. She called all of the teachers a disgrace for endangering not only me but other people, and saying how none of the teachers who allowed this deserved to even step foot into a school. This experience has also not been all sunshines and daisies. After the suit was claimed or made, IDK, my parents got letters and messages basically asking for the case to be dropped. My parents obviously said no. But it still didn't stop the harassment. I eventually got harassed too. All of the people giving me death threats decided to go into graphic detail on what Troy wanted to do to me. Spoiler, it wasn't great. And Troy's parents showed up on my doorstep demanding to see me and talk to me, and how Troy is ready to apologize. Thankfully by then my uncle and I had been on the way to my grandma's house. However, my parents obviously didn't let them in regardless, and said that if they wanted to communicate it had to be through a lawyer. The harassment didn't stop. And eventually Troy sent me a message on a burner account detailing all of the things he was going to do if got the opportunity to, and that I should be grateful that I managed to walk away with just a groping. Troy also kept spewing on about how I'm nothing but a whore or slut, etc. And I should be grateful that someone so popular even looked my way. He kept saying how if I had just let him fuck me, he wouldn't have groped me. However, I know if I did that I would no longer be myself. I would be his property forever. The thought of that makes me want to vomit. Also, his logic doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, I just got receipts and blocked it. I also asked my parents to help me change my number. And I did. My grandma, being the person she is, decided that wasn't good enough and got me a whole new phone. She claims it's compensation for my trauma. Thanks, Grandma. I am starting therapy the day after tomorrow, and I am hoping to start family therapy in August, as, truthfully, I don't know if I'm mad at my parents or should be mad. Like, is it my fault for not saying anything? But that's all the update I can give you for now. The lawsuit will be a whole other process, and hopefully if I remember I can update you all again. Thank you so much for your words. I truly appreciate all of you. I hope this update is clear enough for you, and apologies if you made it this far. Now to the next story. Story 2. My autistic brother spent over £400 of my hard-earned money on Lego, and my mum supports this. I, 14, Have a brother 16 who has autism and I just can't stand it anymore. Before you go and make assumptions, let me get this out of the way. He's not like the autistic people you see on the news or online. He's a perfectly functional, intelligent person. However, he becomes violent when he doesn't get his way, and his brain doesn't get toilet messages, regularly pisses, shits himself. The thing with him is, these things only happen at home. Anywhere else, he doesn't have any problems with accidents in his pants. What happened today drove me over the edge to the point of writing this. For context, here is the usual routine. I woke up to him on my bed hitting me repeatedly. My parents are downstairs making breakfast, oblivious to this. He won't stop, so I shout for my mom. She comes upstairs, gets him off me by rewarding him with chocolate, and proceeds to yell at me for shouting at her, and confiscate my electronics for an hour. When I get home from school, all is fine. I do some homework and go on the Xbox. After around 30 minutes on the Xbox, he does the same thing. Hits me over and over, leaving me with no choice but to call for my mom. She again rewards him for stopping, before proceeding to tell me off, and confiscate my electronics for the rest of the day. I'm writing this with the phone one of my friends bought for me, which I keep under my bed, as this is the only way I get to use technology for over 40 minutes a day. A reminder that this is the daily routine and has been occurring for at least 5 years. However, what happened today was even worse. He'd seen a Lego set that he wanted and beat me up until he got it. I shouted for my mom, but this time, she did something different. She let him order all the Lego he wanted, from my debit card. I've been saving up doing my paper round for 2 years to buy a PC, and he just blew 400 pounds of my money on Lego. I hate this. I hate my life. It feels like I'm only living to suffer. This post is purely me venting, and will likely not go anywhere, but I don't care. With all that said, is there anything I can do about this? I'm a minor in the UK if that helps. TLDR, my autistic brother spent over 400 pounds of my hard-earned money on Lego, and my mum supports this edit. Thanks for all the supportive comments. I didn't think anyone would care. Edit 2. 2,000 upvotes. You guys are insane. I didn't think anyone would care about this, but obviously you guys do. I'm writing an update to answer some of your questions, and explain my next moves. Again, thank you all so much for all of the support update. First, I just want to say thank you. Thank you all so much for all the support on the original post and all of your ideas in the comments. I tried to reply to every comment, but there are so many that I can't do that, although I do read them all. Second, I want to do a quick FAQ as many comments are asking the same thing. So here goes. Move in with another family member, tell another family member. They all live 100 plus miles away and don't believe that it's serious. You can get your money back as you're the cardholder. Nope, I need a legal guardian to go into the bank with me to do that. And finally, hit him back. I am a weak, 5 foot tall 14-year-old. He is a strong, 6 foot tall 16-year-old. This would cause more harm to me because he would attack back harder, and my mum would punish me more. Next, to the people who have offered me money in PMs and the comments. Thank you all so much for the offer, but I'm not going to accept anything. As I've come to realize, the assault is far more serious than the money at the end of the day. Finally, on to my plan. After reading literally 100s of comments, I've decided that the best course of action is to leg it out of school to the police station on Wednesday, and show them my collected video evidence, and the bruises on my arms. Again, thank you all so much for your advice. Please let me know if this is what I should do or if there's a better alternative. Edit, just got 3 videos of this story in a row on TikTok. That's absolutely crazy.
Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. My brother-in-law who married my sister told my wife that he was in love with her. This led to a chain of horrific discoveries in our family. Yesterday, out of the blue, my brother-in-law asked my wife if she could meet him for lunch. He said there was something he needed to talk to her about. When my wife told me about his invitation, she seemed puzzled but not overly concerned. "Do you think it's about my sister?" she asked, furrowing her brow. "Maybe they're having problems, and he wants to get a woman's perspective on things." I found the whole situation odd. My brother-in-law had never reached out to my wife in this way before, but he often texted her and other family members for mundane reasons, so I didn't think much of it. After all, we were a close-knit family, and it wasn't unusual for us to support each other through tough times. "Go find out," I told her, shrugging off my initial unease. My wife agreed, deciding to meet him at a cafe near her office the next day. The next morning, as she was getting ready for work, she mentioned lunch again. "I'm still not sure what this is about," she said, a hint of worry in her voice. I reassured her, saying it was probably nothing serious. Just listen to what he has to say, and if it's something we need to help with, we'll figure it out together, I said. It's a busy cafe, filled with the usual lunchtime crowd, and my wife feels a bit more at ease being in such a public setting. She arrives a bit early, finding a table near the window where she can keep an eye on the entrance. He arrives a few minutes later, looking more nervous than she's ever seen him. They exchange the usual pleasantries, talking about work and the kids for a few minutes. But then, as soon as their food arrives, he takes a deep breath and dives into what he really came to say. He starts by complimenting her, telling her how beautiful she looks. At first, she thinks he's just being polite, but then he keeps going. He tells her how she's always been the light in his life, how she makes him feel things he's never felt before. It was love at first sight, he says, his voice trembling slightly. I've loved you since the moment I first laid eyes on you. If you were mine, I would treat you like the queen you are. I'd give you everything you deserve. My wife is stunned. She stares at him, unable to believe what she's hearing. This man, my brother-in-law, married to my sister and father of their 2 kids, is pouring his heart out to her. He lays it on thick, making grand promises about how different life would be if they were together. He goes on, saying how he's been holding these feelings in for years, how he's watched her and admired her from afar, feeling more and more that they're meant to be together. She tries to interrupt, to tell him he's making a huge mistake, but he keeps talking over her, almost as if he's rehearsed this speech 1,000 times in his head. Mind you, this man has always had a friendly relationship with my wife. Our families see each other often since we're a close-knit bunch. He's always been the fun uncle to our kids, the guy who's there at every family barbecue, every holiday dinner. He does text my wife frequently, but it's always been about mundane things, the kids' schedules, family events, things like that. Nothing overly sexual, nothing that would set off any alarms. In fact, he texts and calls my mom too. They have a friendly rapport, and none of us ever thought anything of it. To us, he's always been just a good guy, someone we trust implicitly. So to hear my wife recount this to me is like a punch to the gut. My wife doesn't let him finish. She stands up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor, and walks out. She's shaking as she calls me, telling me everything that just happened. While she's on the phone with me, the texts from him start. First it's apologies. He didn't mean it, he thinks it's only infatuation. He's sorry for making her uncomfortable. But the damage is done. She leaves work early to come home and talk to me about this, her phone buzzing incessantly with his calls and messages. I tell her to answer one of his calls, to put him on speaker so I can hear. He's crying, begging her not to tell my sister. He keeps saying it was a mistake, that he misread signals, that he thought she felt the same way. Apparently, when we were together this past weekend, he thought my wife was flirting with him, that they had a moment alone in our kitchen where he felt a connection. My wife is a major ballbuster, and I suppose I can see how that can be taken as flirting, but this is beyond anything we could have imagined. He asks if she told me, and I answer yes, as I'm on speaker. Then he starts begging me too, pleading for us to keep this a secret. This went on for a while, him begging and us listening. My main question was whether he had cheated on my sister before. He swore he hadn't, swearing on his kids' lives that it was just my wife. He said I should understand that it was her, only her. At that point, I was done listening. I told him I wasn't going to do anything tonight and that I'd call him tomorrow. Now we're left with this mess, not knowing what to do next. My wife says we should drive over there right now and tell my sister, but the idea of wrecking my sister's family is killing me. Thinking about what this will do to my nieces makes me want to vomit. I know the right thing to do is to tell my sister, but I'm also thinking about my wife. It's not her fault, but there's sure to be resentment from my family. Even if my sister doesn't divorce him and they reconcile, I can't see how we'll ever be together again like we were before, if at all. This whole episode can tear my family apart. I don't give a shit about him. He tried to destroy my family, but I do care about everyone else. Update. So everyone that told me last night that I couldn't wait to tell my sister was right. A little after 12, I got a call from my sister. She sounded upset and said she had to tell me something. My heart sank as she explained that her husband, my brother-in-law, had come to her in tears, claiming my wife had tried to begin an affair with him. He spun a tale where my wife was the instigator, trying to shift the blame entirely onto her. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. I immediately told my sister that wasn't the case and assured her I would be right over. This situation needed to be addressed face to face, not over the phone. I hung up and, with a sense of urgency, called my parents. I woke my mother and father, explaining what was happening in quick, clipped sentences. My father was furious. My mother sounded shocked, but resolute. They agreed to head over to my sister's house to sit with her kids, offering the support she would desperately need right now. Next, I called my younger brother. He groggily answered, confusion turning to alarm as I filled him in. He promised to come over to our place and stay with our kids, ensuring they wouldn't be left alone during this turmoil. His calm, steady presence would be a comfort to them. Meanwhile, my wife was already gathering her things, her face pale and drawn. She was dreading the confrontation, but knew it was necessary. We left the house in a hurry, the drive to my sister's place feeling longer than it actually was. The silence in the car was heavy, both of us lost in our thoughts. When we arrived, the scene was even more tense than I had imagined. My sister is out on the front porch with my brother-in-law when we get there. He looks beaten, eyes downcast, his posture slumped in defeat. He knows we have the texts and voicemails, the undeniable proof of his betrayal. I really don't know what he was hoping to accomplish by calling my sister in the middle of the night with his lies. Maybe he thought he could get ahead of the story, twist the narrative to save himself, but it was a futile effort. As we walk up to them, the tension in the air is palpable. My wife is trembling, her face a mask of controlled anger and hurt. She hands my sister her phone without a word. My sister takes it, her hands steady but her eyes burning with a mix of fury and pain. She scrolls through the texts, her expression hardening, with each one she reads. Then she listens to the voicemails, the damning evidence of his declarations, and her refusals. Before she can say anything, my brother-in-law starts sobbing. This is a man who runs into burning buildings, who faces danger daily without flinching. Seeing him like this, broken and vulnerable, is jarring. His cries are deep and guttural, raw with regret and fear. It's a scene that's almost surreal. A big, tough firefighter brought to his knees by his own actions. My sister's face remains impassive, a mask of stern resolve. She's always been tough, but right now, she's unyielding. She waits for him to finish, her silence more powerful than any words. When he finally quiets down, still hiccuping with the remnants of his sobs, she speaks. "Pack a bag and go," she says, her voice cold and clear. "I can't stand to look at you." He tries to argue, to plead his case, but she's having none of it. "Stop it," she snaps, cutting through his words. "There's nothing you can say that will make this better." She turns away from him, walks over to my wife, and pulls her into a hug. It's a moment of solidarity between them, a small comfort in the middle of this nightmare. They've been friends since college, and the strength of their bond is evident. It's a relief to see that despite everything, they're standing together. This leaves me standing with my brother-in-law. He's a wreck, his face red and swollen from crying, his shoulders slumped. He looks at me, his eyes pleading for some kind of understanding or forgiveness, but I have none to offer. He tries to speak, his voice cracking, but I cut him off. "You need to leave," I say firmly. "This is your mess. You need to deal with the consequences." He nods, defeated, and slowly makes his way inside to pack his things. My sister stays with my wife, the two of them talking quietly, leaning on each other for support. The rest of the night is a blur of conversations and plans. We all rally around my sister, helping her figure out what to do next, how to protect her kids from the fallout. My sister begins questioning my wife, trying to understand why her husband thought any of this could possibly work out. He must have had some reason to believe she reciprocated his feelings. My sister insists that there hadn't been any issues in their marriage, everything had been normal. My wife is crying at this point, tears streaming down her face as she tries to make sense of the situation. "There's nothing you haven't seen," she says, her voice shaking. She hands my sister her phone again, and together they painstakingly go through every text message sent over the past 2 years. They read each one carefully, looking for any hint of inappropriate behavior, but there's nothing there. My wife was just being herself. She has a playful personality, always joking around and teasing. It's part of what makes her so lovable and approachable. My brother-in-law has a similar sense of humor, and they've always teased each other in a lighthearted, harmless way. She does the same with my mom and my younger brother. It's just how she interacts with people. The only incident my wife can think of that might have been misconstrued happened this past weekend. She recounts it, trying to pinpoint where things went wrong. They were all together at our place, and she and my brother-in-law both reached for the fridge at the same time. They playfully jostled for who would get there first, laughing as they did so. He let her win, but then he reached around her waist to grab a beer, moving his hand slowly. She admits that in that moment, the way he did it felt a little inappropriate. It was a fleeting feeling, and she brushed it off, not wanting to make a big deal out of it. She wonders now if her silence gave him some misguided hope. My sister listens, her expression softening. She doesn't blame my wife for any of this. She knows her well enough to understand that her playful nature isn't an invitation for anything more. "It's not your fault," she reassures her, and my wife nods, though the guilt still lingers. As they finish reading through the messages, it's clear there was never any mutual attraction, no hidden signals or secret flirtations. My wife was just being herself, and my brother-in-law took that and twisted it into something it wasn't. The realization that this misunderstanding has caused so much pain is almost too much to bear, but at least, for now, my sister's belief in my wife remains intact. So then, my sister starts going through his MacBook to see what else she doesn't know about. She's angry and frantic at this point, her hands shaking as she types. She guesses the password, and on the third try, she's in. With a deep breath, she starts searching through his files, looking for anything that might shed more light on this nightmare. It doesn't take long before she finds something disturbing. There, buried in a folder labeled innocuously, are a lot of pictures of my wife. They date back years, and what's more unsettling is that they're always isolated shots, just her, never in group settings or candid family moments. My sister clicks through them, her anger turning into a cold, creeping horror. One set of photos stands out. A few years ago, we went on a couple's trip to the Caribbean. It was a rare vacation without the kids, and my wife, feeling more relaxed in the adults-only environment, had worn a bikini. She usually doesn't, preferring more modest swimwear, but this time she had felt comfortable enough to do so. There were probably 50 pictures of her in that bikini, each one taken without her knowledge. My sister's face pales as she scrolls through them. It's clear he's been secretly snapping these photos for years, collecting them obsessively. The realization that he's been harboring this fixation, lurking in the shadows of family events, sends a shiver down her spine. Does this now enter restraining order territory? She wonders aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. This has taken a creepy turn, far beyond what any of us had imagined. The boundary between inappropriate and outright disturbing has been crossed. She calls us over, showing us the pictures. My wife gasps, her hand flying to her mouth in shock. She had no idea he was doing this, no inkling of his obsession. My sister, her anger now tempered by a deep sense of betrayal, starts talking about next steps. Legal action, protection for her kids, and a restraining order. All possibilities that need to be considered now. We're all reeling from this new discovery. The man we thought we knew, who we trusted as a husband, a father, and a brother-in-law, has shown a side of himself that's dark and disturbing. It's not just a matter of infatuation anymore, it's something far more insidious. Unfortunately, the mess continues. My sister agreed to talk to her husband last night and let him explain himself. She was determined to get the full story and decided to involve my wife directly to ensure there would be no lying or half-truths. They set up a FaceTime call with my wife, and I listened in off camera, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and dread. My sister, ever thorough, recorded the entire conversation for good measure. As soon as the call began, the tension was palpable. My brother-in-law looked exhausted, his eyes red-rimmed and swollen from crying. He started hesitantly, his voice shaky, but as he spoke, the truth began to pour out, and the story unfolded in a way none of us had fully anticipated. He admitted he's been obsessed with my wife for years. It started the day I met her, he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. He went on to explain that it was during one of those early gatherings where my sister, eager to introduce her new boyfriend to her friends, had brought him along. My wife and I were dating at the time, but he had met her before he met me. At first, he thought his feelings were purely physical, an innocent crush that he could brush aside. But as time went on and he spent more time around her, he realized it was more than that. He became fixated on her personality, her laughter, the way she interacted with everyone around her. He described moments where he found himself watching her, captivated by her presence, even as she was just being herself, playful and kind. He detailed how he had tried to suppress these feelings, convincing himself that they were harmless. But over time, his obsession grew. He started finding ways to be near her more often, volunteering to help with family events, making excuses to text her about trivial things. It was a slow, insidious process that eventually led to the point where he felt compelled to confess his feelings, deluding himself into believing she might feel the same way. My sister listened, her face a mask of controlled rage and heartbreak. She didn't interrupt him, letting him dig his own grave with each word. My wife, on the other hand, was visibly shaken. Hearing how long this had been going on, how deeply his obsession ran, was almost too much for her to bear. When he finished, there was a heavy silence. My sister finally spoke, her voice icy and measured. "What made you think that my wife would leave me for you?" she asked, her eyes boring into his. He stammered, struggling to find the right words. He mentioned the supposed mutual attraction, the moments he had misinterpreted as signs of her reciprocation. My wife and sister exploded at that point, their pent-up anger and frustration spilling over. There was a lot of cussing, a lot of screaming, the raw emotion of betrayal and hurt coming to the forefront. My wife hung up the call, her hands trembling, her face pale. She was concerned for me, for us, assuring me repeatedly that the attraction was one-sided. I believed her. I always had. Even if she did find him physically attractive at some point, I knew she would never act on it. She's serious about trust and fidelity, something she made clear early on in our relationship. This whole ordeal was a twisted fantasy of my brother-in-law's, a dangerous delusion that had nearly torn our family apart. The tension that had been building up during the call finally erupted into a storm of cussing and screaming. My wife's voice was a mix of fury and hurt, while my sister's was steely and unforgiving. The barrage of emotions was overwhelming, the air thick with betrayal and disbelief. The phone call abruptly ended when my wife, shaking and distraught, hung up because she was concerned for me. She turned to me, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. It was one-sided, she assured me, her voice trembling. I never thought it wasn't, I replied, trying to soothe her. Even if she did find him physically attractive at some point, I knew she would never act on it. She's just not that type of person. Early on in our relationship, there was a moment that encapsulated her stance on trust and fidelity perfectly. I remember watching her one morning as she was dressing, admiring her without saying a word. She noticed, gave me a teasing smile and asked if I liked what I saw. But then her expression turned serious, almost cold. "Never fuck up," she said, her tone leaving no room for misunderstanding. "Or you'll never see this again." She meant every word. My wife is serious about trust. Once it's broken, it's almost impossible to mend. As I sat there, replaying the chaotic scene in my mind, I couldn't help but reflect on my brother-in-law. I knew he was a little cocky, always walking with a certain swagger, but my God, I never knew he thought so highly of himself to believe he could pull off something like this. His delusions of grandeur were staggering, completely detached from reality. I talked to my sister later on, once the initial shock had started to wear off and we could speak more calmly. She was resolute, determined to protect her children from the fallout of her husband's actions. She told me she would be contacting a lawyer first thing Monday morning to see what steps she could take to limit his exposure to their kids. She wanted to ensure that they were shielded from as much of this mess as possible. "As far as I'm concerned, he's detached from reality," she said, her voice steely with resolve. Her concern was no longer about saving her marriage but about safeguarding her children and maintaining a semblance of stability for them. Anyway, my brother-in-law returned home yesterday, not because my sister wants him back but because she can't legally stop him. Despite the turmoil and the clear betrayal, he has the right to be in the house until the legal proceedings move forward. The atmosphere is tense and uncomfortable, filled with unspoken words and palpable resentment. They are done, and I think he realizes that now. There's a hollow look in his eyes, as if he understands that any hope he had of salvaging their marriage is gone. The lawyer tells my sister that since my brother-in-law's behavior over the past few days has been documented, there is a good chance she will be granted full custody of the kids. The texts, voicemails, and the disturbing cache of photos all paint a clear picture of his obsession and instability. He doesn't seem to even want to fight her on that. It's as if he knows he's lost everything and is too weary to put up a battle. My sister will be fine. She's stronger than she looks, and any love she had for him is gone. She moves through the house with a determined air, her focus now entirely on her children and their future. She doesn't seem to be broken up about it. Rather, she looks like someone who's finally seen the truth and is ready to move forward. The kids don't know what happened yet. They sense something is wrong. Kids always do. But they don't know the details. My brother-in-law was never around much anyway when the kids were home. He often slept at the fire station, pulling double shifts and overtime. His absence was a constant in their lives, a silent but ever-present gap that they had grown used to. But it is certain to be hard on them once they know what's going to happen. The stability of their home, the presence of both parents, even if it was fractured, will change. My sister is prepared for this. She's already spoken to a child psychologist to help them navigate the inevitable questions and emotions that will arise. She's ready to be both mother and father, to provide them with the love and support they'll need. As for my brother-in-law, he stays in the guest room, a silent figure in a house that no longer feels like his home. He seems resigned to his fate, going through the motions but devoid of any real fight. It's a sad, pitiful sight, but my sympathy is limited. Some of my friends have said that there must be more women, that someone as obsessive as my brother-in-law couldn't have fixated on just one person. But as far as we can tell, there hasn't been anyone else. It's really just the obsession with my wife. His fixation on her has been singular and intense, leaving no room for anyone else. After everything came to light, my wife blocked his phone number, trying to create some distance and protect herself from his unwanted advances. But on the same night he returned home, he sent my wife an email from an account he had just made. It started with a seemingly sincere apology, but it quickly took a turn into something much darker. He began by saying he never got to finish at the restaurant that day, implying there was more he needed to confess. Then he launched into paragraphs and paragraphs about all the things he loves about my wife. He detailed the desperation he felt, the overwhelming emotions that had driven him to act so irrationally. He recounted every little detail he admired about her smile, her laugh, the way she interacted with others. It was unsettling, to say the least, to see his obsession laid out so starkly. He mentioned their supposed mutual attraction again, insisting that there was a palpable sexual tension between them that he had always felt. He was delusional, mistaking her friendly, playful nature for something more. He painted a picture of a connection that existed only in his mind, a fantasy that he had convinced himself was real. The email ended with a rather large section about me. Let's just say I didn't know he had such a low opinion of me. He was quite certain that I was not satisfying my wife properly. He criticized everything from my appearance to my demeanor, implying that I was somehow unworthy of her. His words were meant to undermine me, to sow seeds of doubt and insecurity. Reading the email was a gut punch. It was clear that his obsession with my wife had twisted his perceptions and fueled his disdain for me. He saw me as an obstacle, someone unworthy of the woman he had placed on a pedestal. But instead of feeling threatened, it only solidified my resolve to protect my wife, and my family, from his delusions. We forwarded the email to my sister and her lawyer. It was more evidence of his unstable state of mind, another piece of the puzzle that showed just how far gone he was. This email, with its mix of apology, obsession and vitriol, might be enough to get him removed from the house permanently. For now, my wife and I are taking it one day at a time. The support from our friends and family has been invaluable, helping us navigate this surreal and painful situation. Finally, my wife isn't doing great, but she is improving each day. She does feel guilty for being too comfortable around my brother-in-law. Normally, she is very careful about setting boundaries with other men. In case it wasn't clear, my wife is quite stunning and receives a lot of male attention. However, she felt safe around my brother-in-law because he was family, and she never thought he would cross any lines. Fortunately, she and my sister are on good terms, and there doesn't seem to be any resentment, which is a relief. We will all be okay, but it will take time. Thank you to everyone who commented and offered their support. My primary concern throughout this was my sister and her children. The impact of my brother-in-law's actions on their lives is immense. Ensuring their protection and emotional well-being became our priority. Children, especially, need shielding from such toxic situations to maintain their sense of security and normalcy. When faced with such a situation, it's essential to act quickly and decisively. We didn't hesitate to gather evidence, confront the issue, and involve legal help to ensure the safety and well-being of everyone involved. Procrastination or denial could have led to further harm. What do you think about this story? Please share your comments down below. Thank you for listening to Vibe Tales. My sister is severely autistic and I hate her for turning my life into a living nightmare. I hate her. That should be wrong to say, but it doesn't feel like it. Ever since my sister was born, it's like I vanished from my parents' radar. I was 6, excited to be a big sister, but that excitement faded fast. The shift was gradual but undeniable. Suddenly, I was moving into the basement because she needed to be closer to mom and dad. That hurt. The basement was creepy and cold, and I missed the warmth of being near them. Nights down there were long and lonely. I'd hear the rest of the family upstairs and feel so cut off, like I was more of an afterthought than a daughter. Losing my toys to her was another blow. She didn't mean to break them, but it happened all the time. I remember trying to explain to my parents how it made me feel, hoping for a bit of sympathy, maybe even justice. But all I got was, "She's younger, she doesn't understand. You're the big sister, you should be more understanding." It felt so unfair. Those toys were my escape, and seeing them broken, without anyone caring enough to address it, just piled on the feeling of being invisible. The MacBook incident was the last straw. School had given it to me because I'd been doing really well, and then one day, it was just destroyed. My school was mad at me for being careless, and my parents. They just added to the blame. No one stopped to consider it wasn't actually my fault. I was furious and hurt, but mostly, I felt alone in dealing with the mess. It wasn't just about a laptop, it was about feeling like nobody had my back. Honestly, trying to balance being a sister and having a life is rough. I love my sister, sure, but it's like my parents forget I'm still a kid too. Every time she needs something, I have to drop everything. Doesn't matter if I'm studying, hanging out, or even trying to catch a break. It's like I'm on call 24/7 without even signing up for it. I couldn't remember the last time I hung out with friends without constantly checking my phone, worried I'd miss a call from home needing me to rush back. My life felt like it was on a perpetual pause, always waiting for the next crisis or the next demand for help. The day I decided to go watch the new Spider-Man movie was a big deal for me. It had been ages since I'd made plans that felt purely for my own enjoyment. My friend Jake had been talking about it for weeks, and his excitement was contagious. I needed that break. A couple of hours where I could just be a teenager, not a caretaker. So, I made a decision. I figured, just this once, I'd turn my phone off to enjoy the movie. Not worry about anything else. Just 2 hours, you know? Walking out of the theater, turning my phone back on, I felt like I was hit by a truck. Missed calls and texts everywhere. I called home immediately, the joy from the movie evaporating with each ring. When my mom picked up, her anger cut through me. "Where have you been? We needed you an hour ago." I could barely get a word in. I rushed home, feeling guilty but also kind of angry. When I got there, it was like walking into a storm. My parents were furious, their disappointment a tangible force in the room. "We rely on you, and you just decide to disappear? To watch a movie?" My dad's voice was sharp, his words punctuated by my sister's background noises, like going to a movie was some kind of crime. I tried explaining I just wanted a break, that I just wanted a couple of whores to myself, but it fell on deaf ears. It didn't matter. "Your responsibilities here are more important than some movie," my mom added, her words final. They grounded me, said I was being irresponsible. All over a movie. Sitting in my room after Ward, it hit me. This wasn't about the movie, it was about feeling stuck. Yeah, I get it, my sister needs me. But sometimes, I just want to do something normal, without feeling guilty or getting into trouble for it. Being 18 and feeling like you're not allowed to have your own life is tough. It was about feeling trapped in a role I never chose, about longing for a piece of normalcy in a life that felt anything but normal. I loved my sister deeply, but in that moment, I couldn't help but feel robbed of the simple teenage experiences, of friendships and carefree moments. Living in my house feels like I'm trapped in a loop where everything revolves around my sister and her needs. Don't get me wrong, I get it. She needs a lot of care, and I want to be there for her. But sometimes, it feels like I'm just another item on the family's to-do list. Help your sister. Make sure she's okay. Can't you see we're busy with her? It's exhausting, feeling more like an extra hand. It's like I'm invisible unless they need something for her. This feeling of being a slave in my own home, it's suffocating. I carry this weight around, a burden that's made me question my own worth. Around the house than an actual member of the family. Then there was this one week that felt like it could be different. I had been chosen to give a speech at a school event. Something about that recognition, it lit a spark in me. I worked hard on that speech, pouring my thoughts and feelings into every word. When my parents said they'd be there to watch me, for the first time in a long time, I felt valued. Finally, something about me. I worked on my speech every night, imagining looking into the crowd and seeing my parents there, maybe even catching them smiling proudly. The excitement was like a beacon, a rare light in the usual dimness of my daily life. Like, maybe this time things would be different. But they weren't. They missed it because of something with my sister. Once again they blamed it on my sister. Standing there, about to start my speech, and not seeing them crushed me. I pushed through, voice shaky and hands trembling. I cried. Not just for the speech, but for all the times I felt sidelined. Yeah, I made it through, and people clapped, but it felt empty. The whole walk home, I couldn't stop the tears. It's not like I wanted to make a big deal about them missing the speech, but it just hit hard. It felt like a reminder that no matter what happens with me, it'll always be secondary. And walking home, all I could think was how this pattern seems like it's never going to end. Talking about colleges with my dad was something I'd been looking forward to. It started off pretty normal. I was actually excited, you know? For once, it felt like we were focusing on my future, on something that was about me. I was getting into the idea, thinking maybe college was my chance to get out and do my own thing, away from all the chaos at home. We were looking at some brochures, talking majors and campuses. It was the closest to dreaming I'd gotten in a long time. Then my dad made that joke. Something about picking a high-paying major so I'd be set to take care of my sister when they're gone. He laughed, thinking it was just a light-hearted comment, I guess. But it hit me hard. All my bottled-up feelings just exploded. I lost it. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I started crying, then yelling, telling him how unfair it was that my entire life was expected to revolve around being my sister's caretaker. It was all coming out, every bit of resentment, every moment of feeling overlooked and undervalued, trying to make him see how much I've had to give up, how everything always circles back to what my sister needs. But they didn't get it. My parents just stood there, staring at me like I was speaking another language, watching me lose it. No comfort, no apologies, nothing. Their faces were so cold, so detached. It was like they couldn't understand why I was so upset over a joke. That's when I realized they weren't going to hear me out. I ran to my room, slammed the door, and I've been here ever since. And here's the thing. I've been in there for hours, and they haven't even bothered to check on me. Not a knock, not a word. Nothing. It's like my outburst didn't matter to them. It's so lonely sitting here, knowing that even this, me being this upset, isn't enough to get them to see how much I'm hurting. It's like I'm trapped in this role they've set for me, and my feelings about it don't matter at all. Am I wrong for wanting more than this? For wanting to be seen as more than just a future caretaker for my sister? It just feels like no matter what I do, it's like my life doesn't matter. I am nothing to them. Nothing more than just an insurance for my sister after they are gone. After hours turned into a day, and then another, with no word from my parents, something in me clicked. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something had to change. It wasn't just about getting away for a bit. It was about needing some space to figure out my own stuff without always being pulled back into the same old situation. I thought of the one person who'd always seemed to get it. Grandpa. Without making a big plan, I just packed some essentials into a backpack one night and left. I texted him I was coming over, half expecting him to talk me out of it or to call my parents. But he didn't. He just texted back, "Doors open." Staying with Grandpa has been eye-opening. It's not like every moment has been some deep heart-to-heart, but it's just calm here. He lets me be. We've talked about college, about what I might want to do, and it's the first time in a while I've been able to think about my future without feeling guilty or stressed. He's been supportive, encouraging me to think about what I want, not what I feel obligated to do. It's weird, but in just a week here, I've felt more like myself than I have in years. We've had meals together, watched some old movies, and he's shared stories about when he was my age. It's been nice, simple, and kind of freeing. I've even started researching colleges again, this time looking at programs I'm actually interested in, not just ones that might make enough money to take care of my sister in the future. Being with Grandpa has given me a glimpse of what that might look like, and it's something I want to hold on to. Wow, thank you for all the support and love that you guys have given me. I never expected this post to reach the popularity it did. Thank you all. After thinking about it for these past few hours, you are right that I don't despise my sister. It's not her fault that she was born the way she is. My parents came to talk to me a while after my breakdown, but I was unable to bring myself to talk to them and only cried and asked them to leave. They have made arrangements with my grandfather for me to stay with him for the time being. My parents want to talk to me, but we have decided it's best I leave for now to have some space and time to collect myself. We will be sitting down and talking later this week about this issue. Thank you all again for the love and support through this. I started by telling my grandpa the story of why I broke down the way I did, and to be honest, when I finally spilled everything to Grandpa, his reaction was way more intense than I expected. I mean, I knew he'd be surprised, but he looked downright shocked, horrified. I told him all about how things have been at home, how I've basically been my sister's full-time caregiver on top of everything else, and how it all came crashing down that day with my dad's joke about college and taking care of her forever. Grandpa was seriously upset, especially when he found out that my sister was supposed to have professional help that she wasn't getting. He said a lot of stuff. He told me some things that I don't feel comfortable repeating here, but in essence my sister is supposed to be getting care from a professional and that my parents were ignoring that. But the gist was that it wasn't right or safe for me to be in that position, especially with how things were with my sister. He couldn't believe my parents were putting all this on me, and that they'd kept so much from the rest of the family. He was also really mad about the whole movie incident, saying it was the last straw that showed how unfairly I was being treated. Grandpa's pretty chill most of the time, so seeing him this mad was kind of a big deal. He told me straight up not to talk to my parents unless he was there, which was a relief, honestly. He said he'd talk to them first, sort everything out, and be there with me for any conversations in the future. But it wasn't just Grandpa. Over the next few days, I heard from aunts, uncles, cousins, you name it. They were all checking in, making sure I was okay, and they were all just as shocked as Grandpa was. Turns out, my parents had been telling everyone they had a professional caregiver for my sister, and even taking money from the family to pay for it. Except, that caregiver never existed. Everyone was pretty upset about being lied to, especially about something so serious. This past week? Man, it's been a roller coaster. Tough, yeah, but also kinda eye-opening in a good way. The whole drama with my parents and finding out all that stuff I had no idea about was a lot to handle. But then, there's been this unexpected silver lining. My extended family stepping up in ways I didn't even know I needed. Grandpa's been at the center of it all, trying to make up for what he keeps calling lost time. He's been really pushing me to just be a teenager again. It's weird but nice. Getting nudged to hang out with my friends more, or just chill and do whatever I feel like. Stuff I haven't really done in, well, forever. It's like he's on this mission to help me reclaim parts of my life I didn't even realize I was missing out on. And it's not just him. My aunts and uncles have been amazing too. They've been around a lot this week, checking in, bringing over food, just talking and actually listening. It's like they're making this massive effort to show they care, to make sure I don't feel alone in this whole mess. It's pretty overwhelming, but in the best way possible. For the first time in what feels like ages, I'm not just the sister, or the caretaker. I'm just me, and that feels really good. The talk with my parents on Saturday night. Disaster doesn't even cover it. I went in hoping maybe, just maybe, we could start fixing things. Instead, it fell apart even more. They actually admitted to a bunch of stuff. Stuff so messed up I can't even bring myself to type it out here. But the kicker? Not a single sorry came out of their mouths. Instead, they doubled down, saying I was pretty much born to be my sister's caretaker. Yeah, my dad actually said that. Like my whole purpose was just about taking care of her. I couldn't keep it together. All the stuff I'd found out, all the support I'd been getting from the rest of the family, it all just bubbled up. I called them out on everything. The lies about the caretaker, the money they were supposedly spending on it but actually weren't, all of it. But they just dodged and made excuses. By the end of the talk, things were even worse than before. It felt like hitting a brick wall, trying to get through to them. I'd gone into that conversation with a sliver of hope that we could mend things, but I walked out feeling like that chance was completely torched. So, after that disaster talk with my parents, I made up my mind. I'm done. Had a long chat with Grandpa and my uncle last night, and we all agreed it's best if I don't go back. Today's the day I'm officially moving out to live with Grandpa. It feels weird, making this huge change, but it also feels right. Like, I finally have some control over my life again. I've also decided I'm leaving the state for college once I'm done with high school. Just the thought of starting fresh somewhere new is kind of thrilling. My aunt, she's been incredible through all this. She told me she's going to start sending the money directly to me, the money she used to give to my dad for my sister's care. Guess it's going to be my college fund now. My parents? They've called a couple of times since that night, but if you're thinking they called to say sorry or that they missed me, nah. They just wanted to know when I was planning to come back home. It's like they're not even trying to understand why I had to leave. I know this is going to be a huge change, and honestly, I'm kind of scared. But at the same time, I feel this weight lifting off me. I'm finally making decisions for myself, and there's something really freeing about that. Today's just the start of something new, I guess. Deciding not to go back to my parents was tough, not gonna lie. There's this uneasy feeling sitting in my stomach, but deep down, I think it'll fade with time. The support I've been getting from the rest of my family has been unreal. It's weird. Even though I've made this big decision, feeling all their love and support makes the whole situation a bit easier to handle. But yeah, the harsh truth? I've pretty much lost my parents through all this. That realization hits hard. It's a lot to process, and sometimes I catch myself wishing things could have been different. But through all the mess, I've come to see something really important. I don't hate my sister. That anger I thought I felt towards her was misplaced. She's not the one to blame for how our parents chose to handle things. I love her, more than I can say, and hating her for something she had no control over was wrong on so many levels. I hope, someday, I can make that right. For now though, leaving is what I need to do for myself. It's about finding my own way, figuring out who I am outside of this whole situation. It's going to be a journey, but I'm ready for it. Edit. Thank you all so much. I wish I could respond to every single one of you, but my lunch only lasts so long. I'll update tonight how the move out went, but until then, thank you all. I want to say that your support has been amazing, and your kindness means more to me than anyone could ever imagine. Moving out was surreal. Grandpa and my uncle were with me every step of the way, helping me pack up my life into boxes and bags. Everything that meant something to me, we took. Make sure to grab all the important stuff like my birth certificate and social security card. It felt weirdly official, like I was collecting pieces of my old life to start a new one. My parents? They were pretty much silent the whole time. Dad took off with my sister not long after I got there, leaving just my mom to watch us pack. She didn't say much, just hovered in the background. It was awkward, tense even. But then, as we were about to leave, she finally broke down. She said she loved me, that she'd miss me. After days of silence, those words hit differently. I hugged her, said goodbye. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Sitting in my new room at Grandpa's house, I keep replaying that moment. Did she mean what she said? After everything, it's hard to know for sure. But I want to believe she did. Right now, all I can do is focus on what's ahead. Maybe, with time, my parents and I can find a way back to each other. I'm